It had all the makings of a complete flop. Sony had the hype train going full steam, all the while a development team called Guerrilla Games, known mostly for their dark first-person shooter series Killzone, was taking its first foray with a new IP by venturing into the overgrowth that has now become the open-world genre. It saw several delays and was the lead dog at E3 for a couple of straight years. Guerrilla Games could not have proved everyone more wrong. Horizon Zero Dawn is a triumphant symphony of game design, art development, writing, and holy shit, it's gorgeous. Perhaps its biggest strength, however, is taking well-worn cliches from the genre and managing to make them new and engaging all over again. Oh, and robot dinosaurs. Don't forget about those. Sony has found its next big thing. This is simply the most beautiful game I've ever seen. Zero Dawn is awe-inspiring not just due to its graphical fidelity, but its blend of creative art direction, masterful lighting, and extreme attention to detail. Blades of grass glide through Aloy's fingers as she passes through them. She leaves footsteps in the snow. She turns her head to breathe every third stroke while swimming. It's this love for all things small that bring both the characters and the surrounding world to life. It's easy to get lost in Horizon's world, be it climbing the tallest mountain or watching these mysterious robotic creatures go about their routines. It's a place that feels alive because it seems to continue even when the player isn't there. All of these visual treats are elevated with equally excellent sound design. Horizon is unique in that its sounds of the natural world, rushing rivers and swift breezes, colliding with the mechanized language of these great beasts. Their massive footsteps reverberate through valleys, and nothing compares with the robotic bellowing of a charging thunderjaw. This all combines to create an incredibly unique experience for the player, which is something not easily achieved any longer. It's tough to be original in gaming these days, between the publisher's pull to make everything more accessible and just the sheer amount of great games already out. Making a mark is an impressive feat. Horizon does achieve this, just like all great games do, by nailing gameplay. As much as I always talk about how important a narrative is, forcing one's way through a boring or frustrating experience can and most likely will ruin a game. Gamers' time is precious, and Horizon's smooth controls and varied combat makes wonderful use of it. The game is built upon the bow and arrow, and using strategy to defeat these massive creatures. Many similar games take advantage of giving the player some kind of vision ability that allows one to see things that may not be immediately apparent. Aloy's focus is such a tool. However, not only is this capability a big part of the narrative, but also allows the player to highlight various weak points among the robotic foes. Combat is a dance that tests both skill and knowledge of these numerous creatures. There's nothing quite as satisfying as a direct arrow fired into the glowing core of a machine, watching sparks and electrical currents buzz and flash, and the beast crumple into a pile of scrap. Each different kind of machine will take various tactics, and the need for strategy increases when facing several different types. Fortunately, throughout Aloy's journey, the player will be armed with different kinds of arrows and a handful of other weapons that can all be used in sync with one another to adapt to different combat situations. This allows all kinds of experimental combat, and helps to keep things fresh even dozens of hours into the game. This is further expanded upon with a large skill tree featuring 3 branching paths, all of which give Aloy various upgrades during combat, stealth, and also her ability to control the machines via hacking. Most of these unlocks proved to be useful and exciting skills that were immediately apparent in the gameplay. Aloy's skills can also be improved by purchasing or crafting unique armor sets. Some of these increase melee and range defense, or how quiet she is while sneaking around. These improvements also allow the player to customize the way in which they play the game. Some may take the straight-up combat approach, improving overall health and melee damage, but personally, I prefer the stealth. Stealth in Horizon is, for the most part, very satisfying. Most of the stealth-based combat is actually against human foes, which delivered a fresh change of pace from the more prolonged, knockdown, drag-out fights against machines. Crouching through patches of long grass to set up that perfect headshot, or sneaking around for a deadly melee attack provided some of the most fun I had in the entire game. Ironically, it also was the source of much of my frustration. A successful stealth attack is achieved by hitting triangle, once the prompt appears above an enemy's head. These contextual prompts are the bane of Horizon's otherwise brilliant combat experience, as the prompt sometimes suddenly disappears. So instead of snapping some dude's neck or ramming a spear through his back, Aloy simply performs a basic melee attack, exposing her to the whole world and forcing her into open confrontation. This incredibly vexing issue is spread throughout the game, as nearly every interaction is contextually based like this. Move the camera in the wrong direction, and the prompt to speak to an NPC or to pick up an item disappears. Even opening doors can be difficult. Now, that's not to say this is the only issue I experienced. While I do enjoy the challenge that some of these larger, more intimidating machines offered, I have never been the biggest fan of a cheap challenge, and there are a select few of these gargantuan machines that can instantly send Aloy to her sudden demise with almost no way of knowing that's about to happen. It can be difficult to gauge the length of a Thunderjaw's tail, for instance, and if I happen to be anywhere within that range, dead. On the opposite side of this coin, however, nothing has given me such relief and pride as watching a metal behemoth come crashing to the ground after a hard-fought battle, and the sense of achievement that precedes it. None of the irritations brought on by some of these questionable button mapping or steep difficulty spikes could subtract from what ended up being a truly wondrous experience. Much of that experience is derived from what may be one of gaming's next big stars. It was difficult to gauge Aloy from preview events, as the developer shied away from showing too much dialogue or story beats. But Horizon's narrative has the player following Aloy's entire life, literally, from infant to young woman. Playing key parts of her upbringing gives small but meaningful insight into this new world, and do an excellent job of setting up the main storyline. Some may find the 2 to 3 introductory hours a bit dragging, but the pacing worked for me. It allows the player to get a hang for nearly every system in the game, while simultaneously building relationships with a handful of key characters that will return throughout the storyline. While there are definitely a few gems among them, most of the NPCs in this cast range from bland to mildly interesting. The best characterization is often witnessing Aloy's reaction to the events unfolding in front of her. Guerrilla Games even allows the player to choose dialogue options based on 3 emotional symbols: a fist for an aggressive, passionate response, a heart that showcases Aloy's ability to forgive or display compassion, and my personal favorite, a brain which often results in talking circles around someone's terrible idea, exposing flawed logic, or just dropping a healthy dose of sarcasm. The most impressive thing about this is that Guerrilla managed to write a character that is strong enough to hold up to each of these choices without making her contradict herself or flip-flop on previous ideas. These options simply allow the player to imbue a bit of their own personality into the game. It reminds me of the dialogue system in The Witcher 3, if one were to ask for a comparison. Speaking of Witcher, Horizon's side quests don't quite live up to the now legendary status of that role-playing game's side questing. Honestly, they don't need to. Between the main storyline and a massive open world full of interesting things to discover, I have to give a pass to Horizon, because Guerrilla managed to avoid the dreaded grocery list side quests. Those really piss me off. Now, these types of activities that are in there are generally relegated to the Errands tab, which, by the way, is a terrible way to label a sizable portion of quests in a video game. Let's come up with a little bit better of a word than errands, people. Horizon's story is actually nothing special, that is, until the end. The last 3 to 4 hours of Horizon are some of the most revelatory, shocking, mind-numbingly world-altering twists I can remember in recent gaming. The answers to nearly every question become answered, and yet somehow the world beckons more questions. I don't want to say any more, but suffice it to say that seemingly the ho-hum nature of much of Horizon's main storyline seems to simply be a ploy to lure the player into a complacent state and shock them back out of it with its closing hours. It fills me with joy to see a brand new IP like this come out as strong as Horizon Zero Dawn has. It's a triumphant return to form from the open world genre that manages to take the banality of the open world genre and make it feel fresh again. It's an elegant recipe of stunning visuals, smooth gameplay, all topped off with what I believe is going to become an instant classic protagonist. PlayStation has landed yet another Hallmark franchise, and it's one that I'd wager will flourish for years to come.